A lot of people don't really know how to learn a language. I've learned Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and French. Although Spanish is the only one I'm actually fluent in. During my time learning languages and teaching English, I've been able to figure out what works and what doesn't. So in this video, I'm going to show you 10 common mistakes that people make when learning English. Or any other language for that matter. I'll prove why these methods are wrong and what you should be doing instead. So, let's get started! The first mistake is focusing too much on grammar. You see, many learners often obsess about learning perfect grammar. Before they dare to speak. But fluency is not grammar perfection. It's about being understood and understanding others. Proof of this is children. They learn to speak fluently before understanding anything about grammar at school. They don't know any grammar rules when they're having a chat with their mum, dad, uncle, aunt, or grandparents. But not only children. Most native English speakers would have no idea how to explain the difference between past simple and present perfect. Despite this, they speak fluently. So, what should you do instead? Learn grammar as it comes up in context. When you start thinking about hypothetical scenarios, the second conditional will surely come up. What would you do if you won the lottery? When you hear this, then it's worth looking into the grammar and mastering these rules. From there, you should gradually refine these skills through immersion and practice. If you keep practicing, then you will get better. So don't worry too much about grammar rules. Focus on grammar as it appears in conversation, when you're writing, when you're listening. Only in context. The second mistake is avoiding speaking out of a fear of mistakes. Many learners wait until they're ready to speak. But what is ready? You see, perfection is an illusion, and perfectionists often put off and delay the real learning because they're not actually taking matters into their own hands and practicing. The best time to start speaking is now. If you delay starting speaking, you're going to delay your progress, and therefore your progress is going to be slower. So the best time is now. What are you waiting for? Research in language acquisition shows that output, speaking or writing, these productive skills help to internalize grammar and above all, pronunciation. If you don't start speaking, you're not going to improve your pronunciation. Mistakes create learning moments, and if you don't try to produce language, you won't know where your weaknesses lie. We need to be producing to know really how good we are and what we need to focus on. What you should do is to start speaking from day one, even if it's just basic phrases. If you're nervous or embarrassed, you can speak to yourself. Record yourself, like I'm doing right now. Watch a video and shadow that person. Repeat what they're saying after them. This is a great way of improving your pronunciation and speaking skills. It's completely normal to be afraid of making mistakes, but I'm sure once you jump in at the deep end and make an effort, you'll find that people appreciate you trying to speak their language, and they'll give you feedback, they'll gently correct your pronunciation or grammar. So, what's the worst that could happen? Give it a go! Number 3 is relying too heavily on translation. Translating word for word from your mother tongue into English slows down the process. You always find yourself looking for the right word, and worst of all, what you end up saying rarely sounds natural. because different languages have different ways of expressing themselves. So if you translate a natural phrase from Spanish into English, it normally sounds a bit weird. Cognitive studies show that thinking directly in your target language, in this case English, actually speeds up your comprehension and allows you to express yourself faster because you're not relying on translating phrases from your language. An example is me translating "I miss you" directly from English into French. Je manque de toi. But in French, this is incorrect. It's directly translated. The correct form is "tu me manques." This is just one of thousands, perhaps millions of examples of how we can make mistakes by directly translating phrases from our mother tongue into our target language. So what should we be doing instead? I recommend using monolingual dictionaries. Dictionaries that are just in one language. So that way you can check out the meaning of a word or phrase explained in English. Another technique is to build mental associations with images and phrases, or series and phrases, moments and phrases. If you learn some phrases chatting with your English friends, then you'll be able to memorize them much faster. Number 4 is learning vocabulary out of context. Memorizing isolated words doesn't teach you how they're used, what register they fit in, or their collocations. This is the big mistake of language learning in the past, when people used to write down lists of vocabulary and memorize them, and they would have translations and they wouldn't put them into context. This is a big no-no. Words learned in context are better remembered and it's easier to then use them in conversation. This is known as contextual encoding in memory psychology. So science proves that it's better to learn words and phrases in context by listening to podcasts, reading the news, and so on and so forth. One way of memorizing new vocabulary is by using flashcards, but a lot of people make a mistake when creating the flashcards because they just put the isolated words. What we should be doing instead is writing down a full phrase of how that word is used in context. That'll definitely help to memorize, but as I always say, the most important thing you can do is immerse yourself in the language. Read, listen, and then output speaking and writing. The fifth common mistake is inconsistency. Many learners binge learn on weekends and then they skip weekdays. They'll study for 5 hours on Saturday and Sunday and then nothing during the week. This results in weak memory retention and, as a result, slow progress. And again, there is science to back this up. The spacing effect shows that frequent spaced learning boosts memory retention much more than cramming. And cramming is what we all used to do at school the night before an exam. You wouldn't study for the days before, and then last minute you would cram as much information into your brain as possible. This often means that it goes in one ear and out the other. So what I suggest here is to build a daily routine. We can use a concept called habit stacking. This is when you associate one action with a habit. Listen to an English podcast during your commute. Read the news in English while you're having breakfast. Watch my videos whilst you're, on the toilet. You choose how you do it. The most important thing, and the only important thing, is that every day you're doing a little bit. That learning English is a part of your daily routine. And if you want learning English to be a part of your daily routine, you can sign up to the British English Immersion Club, my brand new online community designed to help you to live in English and immerse yourself in the language. For only €50 per month, you get access to one small group class per week for B1, B2 or C1 plus level students. If you want to join, a link is in the video description. I hope to see you in class soon. Returning to the video. The sixth common mistake is sticking to only one method. Relying on only textbooks, or only an application, or only reading books, or only listening to podcasts isn't really enough. This limits your exposure and doesn't cover all four bases of language learning: writing, reading, listening, and speaking. For true fluency, you need comprehensible input and you need to be practicing on a regular basis all four of these key skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Just an app or just a textbook can very rarely cover all of these bases. So my advice is, well, what I've already said: to immerse yourself in the language with active and passive learning. You can write a diary in English, listen to my podcasts, read articles on BBC News. Better yet, read books in English. And even better than that is to read a book whilst listening to the audiobook version. This is la crème de la crème. And of course, speak, speak, and speak. The important takeaway is to cover all bases: writing, reading, listening, and speaking. On that note, number 7 is neglecting listening practice. If you're here watching this video right now and listening to my podcasts, I don't think this applies to you. But some learners underestimate the value and importance of listening practice because, well, speaking is important, but if we don't understand what the other person is telling us, then you could be replying to anything. You could be talking absolute gibberish. The good news is that, at least in my personal opinion, listening practice is the easiest thing to build into your routine. Maybe it's because I love podcasts and I love listening to podcasts, but you can listen to podcasts whenever you want. But not only that, by watching this video, you're working on your listening skills. By watching a film or a series, you're also working on your listening skills. So it's a piece of cake. It's easy peasy. The well-known language learning professor, Stephen Krashen, always says that comprehensible input is the most important thing. If you don't have this, you don't have anything. So listen to English as much as you can with a wide variety of sources on YouTube, different people, different accents, everything, just to get used to understanding the way that different people speak in English. At first, subtitles might be necessary, and subtitles are pretty good to help understanding everything and retaining some new vocabulary. But if you really want to test your listening, then you can remove the subtitles. Oh, I know, it can be scary, but back yourself. You know, I bet you can do it. Remove the subtitles and see if you can understand everything. These subtitles actually can't be removed, so let me know in the comments. Would you like me to remove the subtitles or not? Number 8 is not getting real-life input. You see, textbooks often teach a lot of old-fashioned, outdated, and formal language that isn't really used in the real world nowadays. Real conversations are full of slang, abbreviations, idioms, phrasal verbs, and lots of little tricky things that can be really hard to understand. But language is always evolving. It's constantly changing and developing, which is why we need to be up to date with what kind of content we consume and if it's really useful or not, because there are plenty of textbooks that nowadays are useless. That's why here on my YouTube channel, a lot of the videos that I make are conversations. I have conversations with other teachers and sometimes with my mum. So I recommend always watching these videos. That way you can see how the language is really used. Even though it's true that we might speak a little bit slower, and I add subtitles just to make sure that you can understand. Here, social networks and social media is key. Because by following British English or American English or Canadian or Australian English creators on TikTok, on Facebook or on Instagram, you can see how they really use the language and you can pick up some interesting phrases, some slang and some expressions. But some people aren't into social media. If this is you, then of course you can check out videos on YouTube, but also watch series. By watching series, you're chilling out, having a good time, and improving your English at the same time. You're killing 2 birds or 3 birds with 1 stone. Number 9 is avoiding feedback. Without corrections, learners may continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. Feedback is essential for correcting these fossilized errors. These are mistakes that you've been making for such a long time that either you don't realize that you're making a mistake, or it's just natural to speak this way because you've been doing it for such a long time. This is the tricky part because it's very difficult to realize when you're making mistakes without having someone guiding you and teaching you what is right and wrong. Of course, it doesn't have to be a teacher. It can be a native English friend. It could be somebody else who speaks better English than you. Or it could be, well, ChatGPT. If you speak to AI or ChatGPT and give certain prompts to tell the robot to correct you, this way you can have feedback and actually correct your mistakes. I would recommend getting a teacher, but you know, I'm a teacher. So if you don't fancy doing that, you can check out conversation exchanges on italki or Preply, and on top of that, well, you can use ChatGPT. I love AI and ChatGPT, so if you don't, give it a go. And the 10th common mistake is expecting fast results. I'm sure you've seen certain thumbnails or videos saying 0 to fluent in 1 hour. How I learned fluent English in only a week. Follow my method and you too can become fluent in English in just 2 weeks. None of this is realistic. And to be honest, the people who are posting this kind of stuff are just trying to get attention, and maybe worse, maybe they're trying to scam you. Fluency takes time and consistent effort, and there isn't really a cheat code. We can't go from 0 to hero in just a few weeks or months. And even if you do reach fluency, you know, if we don't practice, we get worse and we get rusty. This has happened to me in my Italian and Portuguese. I never got to a point where I was fluent, but I was pretty good. But in the last decade, I haven't really practiced at all. So now, I don't think I could get by in either of these languages. Studies show that it takes between 1,000 and 3,000 hours to reach professional fluency, depending on the language, of course. There are languages like English which are a little bit easier than other languages like, for example, Chinese. But professional fluency? What is professional fluency? Personally, I think when you are at a B2 level, you are pretty fluent in English. You see, fluency isn't about speaking the language perfectly. It's about being understood and understanding others, as I said at the beginning of the video. But obviously, we always want to improve. We always want to be better. So if you are a B2 level, well, you want to get to a C1 level. And if you're C1, you want to get to C2, at least if you're ambitious. So my advice here is something that you might not like, but I'm gonna say it anyway. If you want to speak fluently and confidently in English and feel fluent, you're going to have to do it forever. You're going to have to immerse yourself in English for the rest of your life. Because if you don't use it on a regular basis, then it's going to get rusty and you're going to feel that you're not as fluent. So English has to form part of our routine and our lives. So if you'd like to join my British English Immersion Club, as I said, there is a link in the description. And let me know, are you guilty of making any of these language learning mistakes? If you are, what language learning mistakes have you made? And that's it for today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful and, well, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!